So it has turned 8:30 in France and Germany and 3:30 p.m. in Japan. And so we start right away. And I say now officially good afternoon in Japan and good morning in Germany and France. And a very warm welcome to the virtual trilateral university leaders meeting, France, Germany, Japan, on the topic of future university development beyond pandemic times, organized by the German Rectors Conference, HRK, the Japan Committee of Universities for International Exchange, JACUIE, and the Conference of University Presidents, CPU, in France, and hosted by the Japanese-German Center Berlin, the JDZB. Thank you all very much for joining us today. My name is Phoebe Stella-Holtgreen, Head of Project Management at the Japanese-German Center Berlin, and it is my honor to serve as your MC today. Please let me give you some organizational reminders. Please keep your microphone turned off during all times except when asking a question or making a comment during Q&A. If you would like to ask questions or make a comment during the Q&A sections, please raise your virtual Zoom hand and speak up when the chair gives you the word. Thank you. Now we start with the official program. And first of all, we would like to deliver a welcome message by the Secretary General of the Japanese-German Center Berlin, Dr. Julia Münch.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests from Japan, France, and Germany, my name is Julia Münch, and it is my great pleasure to deliver a short greeting from the Japanese-German Center Berlin. It is an honor to welcome you today to the Trilateral University Presidents Meeting, which we host at our virtual conference room. We have, in fact, a long history of collaboration with the German Rectors Conference and the Japan Committee of Universities for International Exchange. Together, we have conducted several symposia on higher education over the last 15 years. Today's topic, Future University Development Beyond Pandemic Times, is timely and of great importance. Like many other actors, universities had to leap into digitization and had to adapt their teaching to new media all of a sudden, all the while tackling the technical challenges. And challenging it is, the transition into the digital world. Today, you will also discuss how international research collaboration can work out virtually. Concerning our projects, we at JDZB consider discovering the digital space as a great opportunity to increase the number of international participants and of high-ranking speakers. For establishing a long-term and a sustainable network for collaboration, we feel that personal encounters are still an essential asset. All the more, I very much regret that I cannot participate today in person, not even virtually. Please accept my sincere apologies. For now, I'm wishing you good inspirations and a successful exchange. May today's meeting bring about fruitful results for collaboration between our three countries' institutions of higher education. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to announce now words of welcome by the organizing institutions, and I kindly ask President Alt of the German Rectors Conference, HRK, to start, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Good morning, everybody. Dear colleague Manuel Tunon de Lara, dear colleagues Nagata and Ushiki, dear Dr. Münch, esteemed colleagues from France, Japan, and Germany, ladies and gentlemen, herzlich willkommen, a warm welcome to all of you. It is a great honor and pleasure to welcome you this morning on behalf of the German Rectors Conference, the voice of German universities. Naturally, I would have much preferred a face-to-face meeting, but with the pandemic situation continuing, I think it was a good decision, a wise decision, not to wait any longer and to choose the digital format we all are well experienced with for our exchange today. Dear Manuel, since you took office, we have fortunately already had the opportunity to meet virtually on several occasions. I hardly need to say anything more about Franco-German relations. We know and trust each other, and we work side by side which is of increasing importance in an EU after Brexit. We both do our best to promote top-level research, and we are struggling for excellence, for maintaining excellence. So I think this is a joint endeavor, and I very much appreciate this coalition. And it is precisely because of our sometimes differing approaches, which are derived from our heterogeneous academic environments, that our exchange and cooperation is always very fruitful and productive. In the same vein, the Japanese universities are long-standing and very reliable partners of the universities in Germany. More than 800 university partnerships between Japanese and German institutions speak for themselves and prove the enormous mutual interest and attraction. I think these are really impressive figures. Dear colleagues, Nagata and Ushiki, the German Rectors Conference highly values the exchange with JANU and JACUIE. After our Tokyo meetings in 2006 and 2018 and the Berlin events of 2010 and 2016, this is yet another welcome occasion to work together with you. Obviously, the pandemic has greatly impacted on universities around the globe. The German Rectors Conference has worked tirelessly with and for its members to cope with the challenges that have arisen in research, in teaching and learning, as well as in international collaboration, not to forget the social effects on our students, which we have to take in mind. I very much welcome the fact that we will have the opportunity today to discuss these issues in our trilateral context. An interesting discussion is definitely guaranteed. Certainly, we would have not accomplished today's event without our partners in France and Japan. I would particularly like to thank my counterparts and dear colleagues in both countries with their respective teams. Dr. Münch and her team at the Japanese-German Center Berlin for acting as today's virtual host, thus continuing a long-standing and reliable tradition. And last, but certainly not least, the speakers and chairs of today's sessions, particularly my colleagues from Germany, who took the time to join us here today, sharing their vast experience in the field. We look forward to a morning or afternoon, respectively, of interesting and stimulating discussions. Merci beaucoup, domo arigato, goisamashita, vielen Dank.
Thank you very much, President. May I now ask President Nagata of the Japan Association of National Universities, JANU, for his words of welcome.
Hey everyone. Good evening, bonjour, and guten morgen, probably. I'm Kyo Nagata, the president of the Japan Association of National Universities, so-called JANU, and the president of the University of Tsukuba. I'm genuinely delighted with we have the trilateral university president meeting entitled Future University Development Beyond the Pandemic Times. And thank you all very much. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Professor Dr. Manuel Turturara and the president of the Conference of University of Presidents, so-called CPU, and Professor Dr. Peter Andre Alt, president of the German Rectors Conference, so-called HRK, for their outstanding efforts in organizing this symposium. Personally, I miss that both professors. I have known their Manuel. I don't know, maybe the year 7, 8 years ago, when he was the president of the University of Bordeaux. And also, I would like to thank the preparative team of HRK and JDZV for their hard work as a technical host. And I would like also like to express my heartfelt welcome to the about 100 universities, representatives from France, Germany, Japan, and to thank them for their continuous support and cooperation. Concerning exchange between France and Japan, In 2014, at Elise Paris in Paris, JACUIE, CPU, and the CDEFI signed an agreement on the mutual recognition of learning at the degrees and credit for continuing studies in higher education. Since then, several symposia and workshops on higher education has been organized to provide a forum for discussion of common issues and the possibility for the futures. Also, looking back at the exchanges between Germany and Japan, in 2015, we signed an exchanging agreement between HRK and the 3 Japanese university associations, that is JACUIE and the Japan Association of Public Universities and the Federation of Japanese Private College and Universities Associations. We have had several meetings for the university president to share knowledge and challenges for the future, having built a history of exchanges. Today's meeting, held in a new trilateral format, is a concrete action that proves that the possibility of the collaboration based on these agreements, even under the restriction by COVID-19. This symposium will focus on the following topics. First, the impact of digitization on university teaching and learning. Second, a pandemic-induced challenges and opportunities in research. And finally, new options for international collaboration and opportunities and limits of virtual collaboration. The restrictions on international mobility caused by the pandemic have made it clear that new forms of learning using digital technology can be useful in addition to the traditional face-to-face teaching and international student mobilities. This year, on the occasion of 70th anniversary of JACUIE, we issued a statement entitled Serving Society Under the New Normal, a statement from national universities. This statement expresses a determination of national universities to contribute to society under a new set of values. It is one of the actions that are consistent with a philosophy of this trilateral conference. In this line, with this background, I believe that today's discussion will be significant in helping us to reach a common understanding of the challenges facing our universities and practical action for new phases of higher education and international cooperation beyond the age of the pandemic. In conclusion, I would like to thank the moderators, speakers for taking on their roles, and I hope this conference will deepen a mutual understanding between university and the 3 countries and provide an opportunity to build new university partnerships and expand existing network. I'm really looking forward to your active participation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, President Nagata. Please let me now announce President Jaunel de Lara of the Conference of University Presidents CPU in France. President, please.
Thank you. Well, dear President Alt, dear Peter André, dear Nagata Sensei, dear Kyoshukue, I'm really pleased to participate to this trilateral university leaders meeting between Germany, Japan, and France. I think this is a very important triangle between us because on the one hand, as the president of the Conférence des Présidents d'Université, I must say that we have a long history of collaboration with Japanese universities, a very fruitful collaboration for years. And it's my pleasure to meet you today in this seminar. I would like to give warm welcome to Nagata Sensei, to my colleagues from the Tsukuba University, but also from Kyoto University and the new staff from the Tokyo University. I know a lot of them. They are very nice people who are collaborating for science, for education. I must underline what the Tsukuba University has been organizing for years. And this collaboration has been frozen by the pandemics, and it's a real pleasure to meet them again and to start again, as you say, on the next period to come. I have been elected as the president of the Conference of French Universities in last December. And of course, I already knew the very tight relationship we have with Germany in general. You know that in Europe, the relations between France and Germany are very important for the leadership of Europe, but also for different kinds of collaborations, including education and research. And as a new president of the conference in France, I was delighted to have this strong relation between both conferences, CPU and HRK. And I must say, as Peter André said, that this is a fruitful collaboration with a lot of friendship, huge trust between us. And as an example, we are organizing tomorrow a common seminar on science and on the future of science and on the risk of exposure of science nowadays. So this triangle is for me a very important approach, and we should strengthen our relationship. This seminar, and I'm really pleased to welcome all the attendees of this seminar, despite the virtual organization. Thank you to the Japanese-German Center in Berlin for organizing it. I think that these sessions on both education, teaching, learning, and on science and research perspective should conduct to having more common projects between our universities, because I am convinced that after this pandemic period, we need more universities, we need more collaboration between the countries that play an important role worldwide in science. And I also have to underline and to say that for us in Germany and in France, of course, the role of Europe is much important. And I am very pleased that the relations between Europe and Japan are becoming more strategic. I mentioned the summit in last May about the collaboration with Japan and Europe, how ERC has also been involved in the collaboration regarding the research in the field of health. And I think that the perspectives of Horizon Europe and the possibilities of including the collaborations with Japan is much strategic for all of us. So I would like to thank everyone, to wish you a fruitful seminar, and to say how pleased are the French universities to meet again with both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President. And I would like to thank all three of you for all your kind words of welcome. We now proceed to the first dialogue on the impact of digitization on university teaching and learning, chaired by Rector Steinbeck of the University of Düsseldorf. Rector Steinbeck, may I kindly ask you to take over from here? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for all the words of welcome, and also a warm welcome to everybody on behalf of the German Rectors Conference from me, and also on behalf of the Heinrich Heine University Düsseldorf. This morning we start with a very challenging topic. It's the impact of digitization on university teaching and learning. In Germany, the discussion about the future of online teaching, and especially about the right measure, does not stop. Some people say the classic lecture has had its days. Others are of the opinion that there's no substitute for real eye contact. We all agree that digitization is not an end in itself. Digitization must have an added value. But where are the purposes of digitization? Didactic improvements, reaching the students that cannot come to the university because they have other commitments, or preparing students for a digital world. And what does all this cost? I'm pleased to discuss these items with you and our three speakers, and I proudly present now our three speakers. They are first of all, President Leonel from Bordeaux Montaigne University. He's giving a statement. And after that, we have two inputs from the president of the Shimane University, that's Yasunao Hattori, and from Dieter Lenzen, that's the president of the University Hamburg. Thank you very much. And now the floor is yours, Mr. Larrey. I hope I've seen you before. There you are. Please.
Thank you, Mrs. Steinbeck. Thank you very much. Konnichiwa, guten Morgen, bonjour. I'm Leonel Larrey, president of Bordeaux Montaigne University, France, and I'm a professor in North American history. And it's a great pleasure to be here today and to meet kind of all of you for the first time, mostly apart from my French colleagues. The pandemic has increased, obviously, our uses of digital teaching. This web seminar is only one more proof of this, and this seminar is actually one proof that this increase of usage can actually be a good thing. Has increased our use of digital teaching, distance teaching, and distance learning. If some tools and practices were known of the students and teachers before the pandemic, there is nothing in common between what we used to do because we wanted to and because we found it useful, and what we were forced to do literally overnight when we were first confined to our homes. In France, this happened in March 2020. I know it happened at different times in Germany and Japan. As universities organized the transition so very quickly, new issues emerged. When some had encouraging outcome, others foregrounded difficulties that we knew of, but which were only put in stark relief during the crisis, because of or thanks to the development of our uses of digital teaching, distance teaching, and distance learning. Some of these outcomes have been positive. Universities which could afford it bought state-of-the-art equipment which can make new pedagogical practices much easier. No doubt these universities will put this new equipment to good use when we are at long last out of this pandemic crisis. For example, developing their outreach to distant territories within their area, within their country, but also internationally. Another positive impact, even though it may have been, the positive aspect of it may not have been obvious to all teachers immediately, but teachers have been forced to have an introspective look at their practices and sometimes reassessed quite enthusiastically their pedagogical methodologies to make them more agreeable to younger people's usage of digital technologies. It is no secret, of course, that there's sometimes a gap between our students' knowledge of these technologies and us teachers. But for some of the teachers who maybe had a keen interest in those technologies in the first place, they were put in a position where they could reflect on their practices and adapt them to our new teaching in the pandemic, and probably discovered some interesting new methodologies that they are going to keep after the crisis, after the pandemic, and that they are going to develop and enjoy even, I dare say. Some negative impacts, though, are sometimes the other side of the medal that I've just described. The positive aspects I've just mentioned briefly, I do not think are a generalized phenomenon. Some teachers were reluctant, even defiant, and not everybody adapted properly and well to this new context. The use of new technology may not have radically changed the way we teach sometimes, the way knowledge transmission happens. In some cases, it may have forced teachers and students back into a kind of top-down relationship that was not necessarily the most common practice before the pandemic. In a Zoom class, temptation was strong to simply give a lecture, hoping that students hiding behind a mosaic of black squares took notes. Unfortunately, we know that it did not always happen, and that some students did not have a good experience of this way of teaching, which paradoxically enough brought us back decades in the past, when the transmission of knowledge was only a top-down way of teaching. All universities could not afford to put a Zoom box in every classroom. They could submit projects to maybe obtain some funds to buy the necessary equipment, at least in France. Of course, I'm talking from a French perspective here. I don't know what happened in Germany and Japan, but that's why we're here. These funds, however, should have been given automatically to all universities which needed it, since all students were victims of the pandemic. Some universities could afford to equip themselves dramatically. Some could not. And so we ended up having some stark inequalities between students from one university to the other. Similarly, some universities lacked the proper human resources that could help teachers get the hang of the tools, some of which were basically unknown to many. The pandemic and the digital adaptation of our teaching also revealed more starkly that all students were not equal when it came to distance learning. Some could not afford a computer. Some lived in places where internet access was sporadic at best. Now, the good side of this very negative aspect of the pandemic in the digital age is that most universities gathered their forces with the help of students, of student associations notably, and with the help of everybody willing to help, really, gathered their forces to, well, to help students equip themselves when they needed it. Another negative aspect, of course, is more of this digital era, a consequence basically of the lack of equipment that some students had, have been shown by different studies, which have highlighted the psychological impact of confinement on the students and on some teachers and staff members. The impossibility to socialize in a classroom or to socialize with colleagues had effects that one may not have imagined before. At the end of the day, judging by how enthusiastic teachers and students are to meet again in classrooms and on campuses, the forced transition to the Zoom era may have simply emphasized how essential a more direct, a more interactive link between a teacher and her students are to a positive, constructive, and fulfilling pedagogical relationship. We are so happy now to see students that we hold dear, close to our heart, this relationship we can build in the classroom. Now, this doesn't mean that all the progress that has been made sometimes by teachers, students, by universities in the pandemic, thanks to digitalization. All this progress, of course, should not be thrown out the window. But we're going to have to be very careful, probably, about the level of equipment of universities everywhere, of students everywhere, whoever they are and whatever their social background, and also of basically the impact of these new technologies on the quality of our teaching. Thank you very much for this opportunity to say a few words, basically to start the conversation on this topic.
President Larrey, it's on our side to thank you for this really meaty statement. And I would like to turn over now to President Hattori for the next input.
Hello and good morning for the participants of Germany and France, and konbanwa for Japanese participants. So this is Hattori from Shimane University. I'd like to make some comments and some information about our university on the pandemic for digital teaching. Okay. At first, so I would like to thank President Leonel for the valuable lecture on the impact of digitalization of higher education. I think so all of the problems he posed, we can share for all universities over the world, I think. Especially, I think so he posed the problems on psychological problems for students and teachers. And he pointed out the importance of the relationships of people, including students and teachers. It's very important. And so I think that this is the most important problems for digital learning, I think. Okay. Okay, so now I'd like to provide some information about the status of the digitalization at Shimane University in the corona from last year. Simon University banned students from entering the campus during the first half of the year from April to September 2020 and conducted all educational activities, including classes, experiences, practical trainings. All of them are via remote learning. From the second semester of 2020, efforts have been made to conduct face-to-face classes as much as possible. In addition, since August 2021, about 70% of students and 80% of faculty members have completed vaccination, and about 70% of classes are now conducted face-to-face. On the other hand, focusing on the merits of online-based classes, such as the increase in student self-study time, hybrid classes using learning management system have begun to develop while still offering face-to-face classes. During this period, Shimon University has been working on an initiative to award outstanding online classes and share them to the faculty members. The accommodation was given to a project-based course in which students collaborated with companies and governments online to create system services and business plan over the course of a year, and to a course in which students experienced online clinical practice at multiple hospitals, leading to the development of practical skills similar to actual medical treatment. In the past 2 years, on-demand lecture content has also been refined, and by improving and accumulating this content, students will be able to study at their own pace in their own time and place, which is expected to complement and enhance conventional education. Finally, I would like to thank President Leonel once again for his important and thought-provoking talk on the digitalization of university education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Hattori, for this very vivid input. And now I warm welcome to Hamburg. President Lenzen, may I ask you for your input, please?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning or good afternoon to all of you. I'm happy to see a lot of people I know again. I would like to make some comments this morning on the question, what should be the goal of future developments in the digitalization of the education sector, especially in tertiary education. And what I would like to propose is that the goal for the individual should be what I call digital sovereignty. What does that mean? There are two sides of sovereignty, which we can see with regard to the notion of sovereign states. On the one hand, a sovereign state is strong, and on the other hand, it cannot be forced to conduct itself in a certain way by other states. This analogy can also be applied to individuals. The digitally sovereign individual whom you wish to educate at our universities is digitally competent in the sense of strong on the one hand, and independent on the other hand. This means that individuals determine the scope and use of digital means themselves and do not yield to compulsion. How can we now encourage our teachers and of course our students with regard to digitalization? I think there are several aspects. The first is the digitally sovereign student has both a critical and optimistic attitude towards the digitalization of the world. Second, the digitalization, the digitally sovereign teacher masters all educational uses of digital media and understands how to develop a suitable mix of in-person and digital teaching approaches. Third, digitally sovereign teachers continually educate themselves on the use of digital techniques in the classroom. Fourth, teachers and students who wish to be digitally sovereign have ethical principles to ensure teachers and students' human rights and right to self-determination in a digital context. What conditions must universities meet to promote this training of digitally sovereign individuals? I think a university needs, for the first, a university-wide strategy for digitalization in teaching. Second, a university requires a suitable infrastructure, of course. Third, a university needs a quality management system for this. A university needs and sets up learning platforms. A university which is sovereign in the sense of digitalization organizes e-assessments. Such a university takes part in educational data mining. This kind of university provides the necessary service and advising measures. A university of this kind offers HR development in the area of digitalization and teaching. It develops a code of conduct specifically for digital teaching and learning opportunities. The university we want to have in this sense finally uses digital teaching and learning to expand upon the internationalization of the classroom via mutual exchange and joint activities with international partner universities as we do today. To drive these developments and ensure top quality, we must establish broad international research on teaching and learning in the field of digital instruction. We don't know very much about this kind of teaching, and there is only small evidence on all which is discussed at the moment. For instance, the question of presence in teaching. We don't know about the effects. There is only opinion at the moment. What is more, policymakers must understand one thing. Digitalized instruction is not cheaper than in-person instruction. The idea that digitalized teaching and learning material can be used over and over again and is thus cheaper is erroneous. The fact is that digital curricula are significantly more expensive than in-person lectures or seminars. It's an illusion to think that politicians can save money by this way. We experienced this in connection with the development of the MOOCs. Developing a single curricular component at European universities I don't mean, putting a camera on the face of a professor. That's no digitalization. That's nothing. But to have units in the sense of digital teaching, you can really use. A single curricular component at our university, for instance, swallows up to 200,000 up to 300,000 euros for one unit. Having said that, the investment is worth it because there is no alternative to moving into digital teaching and learning, and not just due to a laboratory generated virus. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Lenzen, for pointing out this very important point about the goal of digitization, that the digital sovereignty. Now, I would like to open a discussion. Maybe you have questions on the statement, on the input. You have other statements, comments. Maybe you just raise your hand or you write a message in the chat. Yeah, President Larrey.
Yes, I just want to underline two of the points raised by my colleague who spoke last. The belief that this kind of teaching is cheaper, that is very important. It's indeed an illusion. I completely agree with this way of seeing things, and unfortunately, maybe the decision makers have a tendency to see it as a way to save money and to save human resources, and also the absolute necessity of training indeed the teachers in these new educational, in these new ways to educate. For overnight, when the pandemic broke out, we adapted, the teachers adapted, and the students, of course, adapted to this new way of teaching. But this adaptation, we should not believe that now that we have adapted to it, we know how to do it. We still don't know how to do it. Some of the teachers do because they had an interest in it before, but most teachers do what they can, very enthusiastically sometimes, very willingly, but they do what they can, and unfortunately, they often do not really know what they're doing. And I include myself in this in this very critical statement. So yes, training the teachers is very important and is going to require, of course, funding.
Thank you. President Alt, did you raise your hand? Oh, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I think all three inputs were very helpful. Each crisis is both strengthening and accelerating developments which are already given in a society before the crisis. And this includes both risks and opportunities. And Professor Larrey has reflected on some of the risks, for instance, the fact that digital tools are not available for everybody, and that social inequalities are reflected by the heterogeneous conditions under which our students are working. So social inequalities are a problem and have been a problem in this crisis. And the same counts for institutions. Not each institution is equipped properly on the technical level. And we must keep up with this challenge, and we must close the gaps in our respective national academic systems. I think Dieter Lenzen has underlined the importance of autonomously acting in the situation and providing a digital system which is more or less reflecting the specific needs of the disciplines and which must be set up with regard to optimizing the working conditions of discipline. And I would like to add just one aspect to this very important issue of digital sovereignty. This is the technical field. We must reflect the fact that we are not acting independently with regard to our providers. Are we really independent when using Zoom? We are not. So are there alternatives? I think we have to think about this before the process is going on. And in the end, there are just 2 or 3 meta players who are covering the whole field and are forcing us to follow their rules. I think this is also a part of digital sovereignty. And I think we must think about alternatives, how to take care for data safety and for our value of an independent and autonomous academic system and science and research field. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I have 4 more comments. This President Jekyll first, then Mrs. Blechinger-Talcott, Mr. Tomimoto, and President Tounon. Herr Jekyll.
Well, good morning to everybody. Thank you for the statements. I just would like to add one point that has a little bit to do with the MOOCs aspect that Dieter Lenzen mentioned. Before the pandemic changed our view on the possibilities of digitization, it was very much expected that digitization will lead to more standardization in all the things we can offer in the field of teaching. And what we have learned, Leonel Larrey, during the pandemic, I would say, is that we now can introduce a lot more of diversity in teaching, starting on the local level of your campus, moving on to national collaborations, and to our friends in Japan. The digitization enabled us to continue a lot of international collaborations, especially in the student exchange programs during the pandemic. And we have very much learned about combining traditional and new ways of teaching. And I think this is a very important aspect for how to organize teaching, learning, and research too after the pandemic. I think the diversity aspect in teaching has moved forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Mrs. Blechinger-Talcott.
Yeah, thank you very much, Verena Blechinger-Talcott. I'm Vice President for International at Freie Universität Berlin. I have 2 points to make. I very much enjoyed the inputs this morning, and I think it's indeed true that we have a tremendous set of opportunities that comes with digital teaching if it is done right. And I think Dieter Lenzen and also Leonel Larrey were very clear about that it costs money and it requires concepts how to actually engage in or how to design courses that provide valuable and enrichment through digital teaching. We have at Freie, we have made very good experiences with our European network where we did digital mobility in emergency. It was a program where we exchanged courses with our European network partners, and we found that our students were very strategic in using these offerings. So they were looking at ways how to complete or to get some value that we do not offer in our course offering. So in that way, it was a very good way. And I think this would be an opportunity also for us here in the trilateral cooperation. It was a very good way to complement each other's course offerings and to provide a value added through the digital experience. That said, since I'm in charge of international relations of the university, digitalization cannot and should not replace physical mobility, especially for the students and especially for young scholars. One of our colleagues in education just did a study of our so-called Mittelbau, so the postdoctoral teachers and lecturers at the university, and we found that their career chances and also their happiness in life and with their own careers improved dramatically based on the feeling of being part of a network, also beyond one's university. And if you're young, this network usually comes through physical contact. If you know each other already, then you can deepen it through digital formats. But for the first initial creation of networks, I think we need to provide opportunities for our young people, our students, our doctoral candidates, and our postdocs to still have physical mobility as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really an important aspect. I agree. Mr. President Tomimoto.
Yes, I'm a senior advisor to the Vice President for International Cooperation. I would like to speak about a different perspective, particularly I'm teaching SDGs and gender issues. And we are talking about the most advanced country where the Wi-Fi condition is very much developed, but there are majority of students living in the developing countries without infrastructures and not so good condition for Wi-Fi. So maybe digitalization is rather limited for those countries. We are accepting many students from Asian countries and Africa, which are quite important for our future discussion. The second point is gender balanced or gender oriented security assurance, because the major IT companies, including Zoom or Team of the Microsoft, do not have any clear policy for securing the gender-oriented risks, which might be some social impact, particularly for female students using digitalization, and maybe their ID and email address can be open for anybody. So it must be very important. And since Japan is very low ranking for gender gap index recently, according to the World Economic Forum's report, 120th ranking out of 156 countries. And majority of the president of the universities are male. So maybe we need more input from female president or vice president for future digitalization education and research. Thank you very much.
Surely, I agree. Mr. President Toulon de la
Excuse me, I was putting the microphone on. Well, in fact, my question or my point was that of Vice President Blechinger and Tolkot from Freie University in Berlin, and in some way the last opinion. In fact, the question was, do we are changing our strategy regarding mobility of students? Because I do believe that, as it has been said, physical mobility is much important. And you know that in Europe, the programs are based on this mobility for ages. You know how Erasmus programs has been a success in Europe. I am afraid that there is a risk with digitalization of programs, and also I think we should take into account the opinion of students regarding travel, regarding climate change and their opinion on these aspects. And so do the colleagues in the universities from Japan and Germany and in France are changing? Are they changing their strategy? Do we have to more switch on the practice for these aspects of mobility? What is changing with this new approach of teaching that has been illustrated by Leonel? I don't know if we have an opinion on that.
Thank you. This is really an open question, I think, but I now go from France to Japan to Mr. Ida from the Shiga University.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I was very interested in the concept of digital sovereignty presented by President Lentzen. However, I think I find some negative aspects when you stress too much on the word sovereignty, because sovereignty should be held by mature individuals. However, the students are not always matured in the sense of technology, because a student, well, maybe some students are very much skilled in the digitalization, but some others are not. And in our university, it was very difficult to make them in an equal status in the digitalization and so that for the online learning outside the class. So I think the digital literacy, if I say, should be also stressed when you speak out the digital sovereignty or digital maturity, if I say. And I have the second point, which is I would like to stress the some risk of lacking the sense of collectivity in the university learning among the students, because students make their mutual relationship after the class or during the class when they meet each other in a real situation, not a virtual situation, so that mutual assistance among the students may be maybe build up during the face-to-face classes and so on. However, the online teaching and learning, some students feels very alone, so that the mental problem is very difficult and very important question for our university. And we are giving services for mental consultation with doctors or psychiatric doctors and so on. Thank you very much for your attention.
Herr Scholz, haben Sie weiter?
Thank you very much. I would like to put a focus on other technical means for online teaching, which are usually not discussed in rounds like this, so rounds of rectors, for example. We have already the technical means in general available, for example, for remote control also of lab exercises, for example, in natural sciences or in engineering. So this could mean that we could provide shared access to specialized labs, for example, not available at every university, but then for all students. So what I think is that the next step after conference tools like Zoom is really to automize our labs in natural science and engineering and provide remote control. And that means that we have to invest at our universities. So we have to invest as universities in this really very expensive technical means, but this will be a real good step forward in the future. So just to put another focus on other technical means for digitization of university teaching. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I have two further comments, and I think then we have to come to an end. President Lenzen, and then we go back to Japan to President Katagiri. Mr. Lenzen.
Thank you very much. I just would like to add something concerning the question of students' mobility. What we do and did already with our strategic partners internationally is to discuss the issue of exchange of students virtually, which means that we take over lectures and seminars and so on from our strategic friends, for instance, in France, and vice versa. So, and that implies, of course, to import credits so that they don't need to travel to anywhere. But of course, the right way seems to be a mixture of both. Of course, young people have, to live in another culture because you cannot see it on the screen. But in addition, or sometimes also in replacement, this seems to be an appropriate way to add more of the kind of digital units into the students' exchange.
Yeah, thank you. And now I can't see, but there's a hand raised from Mr. Katagiri.
Thank you. I'm Yasu Katagiri from Japan Future University, Hakodate. I want to raise somewhat different issue, the issue of evaluation of educational outcome. And when we move to online teaching, we observe, at least with some of the classes, when we just look at average of, say, exam grade, students generally do better compared with before this pandemic, online teach or face-to-face teaching. But if you look closely, the gap between good students and not so good students are widening. And some of the faculties observe that people who are strongly motivated and what they say are capable of self-regulated learning fully take advantage of this online teaching, online learning. But there are other type of students also. So we need to think about how to cope with that situation. Just simply taking average may not be a good way to evaluate the educational outcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I thank you all for these important aspects. We heard the positive and negative aspects of digitization, like that the social inequality has increased, but also that there's more mobility possible. But I think we can summarize that we all agree that without financial effort, there will be no digitization, and that we have to train the teachers, and that we have to stress the digital autonomy, or what Professor Lenzen said, sovereignty. There's one aspect that we couldn't discuss fully, and this maybe should be deepened later on. This is the mobility of our international students, if we need a new strategy and what we are doing in the future. So I think there are some questions still open, and I thank you very much for your statement, for your input, and for your comments. And I now give back to the organizers.
Thank you very much, Rector Steinbeck. And we have now planned a break of 10 minutes. So we will resume with dialogue 2 at 9:50 in Germany and France and 4:50 p.m. in Japan. Please stay in this meeting with us, but of course, please feel free to switch off the camera during the break. Enjoy your short break and please be back in 10 minutes. Thank you very much. It now has turned 9:50 in Germany and France and 4:50 p.m. in Japan. We kindly hope you have enjoyed this short break, and please let us now resume our program and proceed to dialogue 2 on pandemic-induced challenges and opportunities in research. This dialogue will be chaired by President Ida of Shiga University. President Ida, please.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, for your very kind introduction. Guten Morgen for German colleagues. Bonjour, mes chers collègues en France. Et konnichiwa or konbanwa for Japanese colleagues in Japan. My name is Ida Ryuichi. Ida is my family name, the president of Shiga University in Japan. I was asked to chair this dialogue too. This session is devoted to pandemic-induced challenges and opportunities in research. This subject is intended to cover topics such as the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on research in university, how to deal with it, as well as lessons learned and challenges for the future. We have two speakers in this session. So this session will start with a statement for 10 minutes given by Professor Dr. Peter Andre Alt, President of HRK, Rektorenkonferenz from Germany, and then followed by two inputs, each one for 5 minutes. First by Professor Manuel Tunon de Lara, président de la conférence des présidentes et présidents d'universités en France, and second by Dr. Katagiri Yasuhiro, president of Future University Hakodate Mirai Daigaku, Japan. And after these three presentations, we will have a discussion for about half an hour. Then, having said that, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Peter Andre Alt, President of HRK, to give a statement. So, President Alt, you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed for this kind invitation. I would like to reflect on what I would call the pandemic-induced challenges and opportunities in research. And my focus would be reflecting both the chances and also the risks in the whole process. And I would try to bundle this in two key statements. First, I think university research successfully rose to the immediate challenges of the pandemic. This is a success story, and it's about institutions which have been proven robust and also autonomous in solving the both technical, infrastructural, and specific science-related problems in this field. But far beyond this, there are a lot of problems unsolved. Second statement, second observation, I think decision makers in academia must now turn to address the long-term effects of the pandemic, in particular relating to scientific careers. We need studies, we need data, we need reliable figures which can show us what has happened with our younger researchers during the last 1.5 years. What have been the side effects on their careers, their expectations, and their research projects. So it's not only about the progress of science, the question how could science react and how could science handle the massive problems of infrastructural confinements, but it's also a question about the individual careers and the side effects on these. So first, what challenges and measures have we seen at the height of the pandemic? First of all, the crisis scenario, the lockdown effects. In all of our countries, we had different periods of lockdowns. In Germany too, between March and May 2020, and then a very long period between early November and March. During these periods, universities had to be closed, and the many research-related tasks were interrupted. Lab work was hampered. Empirical research involving humans in the field of psychological experiments and medical trials were confined, so to some extent even completely interrupted. Access to libraries and archives was reduced. Field trips were not possible. Research cooperation, in particular on the international level and with industry partners, was massively suffering. What we observed in Germany, in particular with respect to companies, that they cut their research-related budgets very early, already in March. So usually industry reacts quickly when it comes to shortfalls and to cutting budgets, much quicker than universities do. And that was a fact we were all suffering from. Academic conferences were cancelled. I think that was something we could compensate by our digital tools very well, without completely replacing it, definitely. And we will find a good balance in the future. We all have learned that it's not inevitable to travel in each case, that it to some extent can even be better to concentrate, to focus on a virtual level. So the massive cuts in science and research were also to be observed in medical studies. In Germany, we had a focus on virology, definitely, but 80% of our clinical studies were stopped or even canceled in this time. I think this is also a massive side effect of the pandemic, that it forces to focus on this topic, which was challenging and which was at the first stage of our interest, virology, but the rest of many other fields was influenced, was confined. What have been the consequences and countermeasures at first hand? We had to line up with the hygiene standards in accordance with the respective different national standards. We had to implement strict rules to reopen infrastructure after the respective lockdowns. We had to adapt time frames. Many research projects based on third-party funds had to be extended, at least in parts. Additional funding was necessary to cover additional costs. Online conferences were set up, and we had to adapt new research agendas. Pandemic research, related research soared, as I've already mentioned. Additional funding was provided here. In Germany, for instance, we got 150 million euros for establishing a network of university hospitals in order to closely link themselves, in particular with accordance to the challenges of COVID-19 and the respective research in this field. So the greatest success from a national perspective, which is not really primarily relevant, but I should mention this, was the development of a vaccine by a company BioNTech, which is located in Mainz, and it is a startup of the University of Mainz, revealing how important fundamental research and a permanent funding is here. A sustainable funding is necessary in fundamental research. I personally remember times when we appointed professors in the field of virology, when experts were saying this is not a really thriving field. We don't need them any longer. We haven't any virology related problems in the future. So this is a misprediction, and typically reveals such a type of misprediction that we must be interested in sustainable funding, even in fields which seem to be not that attractive at the moment. Universities and research communities generally rose to the challenges of the pandemic, and they adapted quickly and successfully. This is the positive effect of the crisis. But on the other hand, long-term challenges remain, affecting international cooperation, university-industry relations, and in particular scientific careers. And that is what I now want to tackle a little bit more in detail, the long-term challenges and effects on careers. First of all, we all witness this in international collaboration. There are remaining restrictions on mobility. And even though our funding institutions are very flexible and they are combining direct exchange with virtual elements, we must find a good balance in the future. And that is not easy, finding a good harmony between exchange, direct exchange, which is necessary, particularly for young researchers and students, and the virtual tools, which are to be practiced here in this field. There are potential cutbacks on public funding due to the pandemic-induced austerity politics. Here in Germany, you know, we are in an in-between period. We are negotiating, not we, but our parties are negotiating a new coalition. And I was very satisfied in reading the first paper on this endeavor and identifying a sentence which said, we do not want to reduce our expenditures in the field of science because we need this as an element for solving problems of the future. So we hope that the austerity politics, which we have to expect because we had high expenditures in fields of social help, that this won't cover and influence our science policies in detail. Hopefully this will be the case also in many other countries worldwide. A field of major importance is the university-industry cooperation. Here we see a certain extent of disruption of R&D networks. The suspension of cooperation during the height of the pandemic may have long-term effects, particularly in engineering. Hopefully, we can compensate this and overcome the side effects here. The reduction of R&D budgets due to economic crisis must be overcome, but this is also a problem. Maybe there are some colleagues from technical fields, which is not my field, who can contribute to that from their experiences and their perspectives, because we should not only focus on medical problems, we all know that we have to solve a lot of technical problems worldwide and globally connected. So what are the side effects of the reduction of collaboration in the field of universities and industry? One major question we have to solve and to tackle. Scientific careers. There are certain long-term CV effects. The disruption of research projects in early phases of the careers may put this generation of researchers at a disadvantage compared to earlier generations. So the regular interruption of projects is not doing well and is massively influencing the outcome of projects. We all know this. There are limited opportunities, or might be limited opportunities, for the next generation, as the current generation of researchers may need more time for their qualification. Recent graduates have fewer options to enter the system unless funders grant more support to temporarily hire more research staff, which could be a solution, but it also needs more money. And already addressed in the first round, the question of gender equality. The closing of childcare facilities in particular had a negative effect on in general on family situations, but particularly on women pursuing scientific careers. The crisis also caused a setback for gender equality related activities and forced us back into old patterns of labor sharing, which are not appropriate. But in fact, women had to suffer massively from this crisis, and there they had certain risks in their academic careers, which we must overcome, and we have to care for our female researchers in particular here. Finally, universities must continue to pay attention to long-term effects of the pandemic for years to come, in particular when assessing researchers and taking career-related decisions with respect to hiring them to tenure, for instance. We have to be aware of the fact that these last 1.5 years were no regular years with respect to academic careers, and we have to decide individually with respect to certain confinements and risks our young colleagues had to suffer from. Last but not least, our German Rectors Conference Executive Board has passed a resolution highlighting many of these already mentioned challenges in January 2021. And we continue to work with partners in our so-called Alliance of Science Organizations in Germany, which is consisting, for instance, of the non-university institutions as the Max Planck Society or the Helmholtz Association. We want to make sure that all actors in the research system are aware of these long-term effects and find common answers. And this can be hopefully a contribution to invite you to debate potential common answers in this circle. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you, Professor Dr. Peter Andre Alt. Thank you very much indeed for your quite rich presentation. So now, President Manuel Tunon-de-Lara of the Conférence des Présidents d'Université from France. Would you please give your presentation for 5 minutes? Present.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Voilà.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, President Ida. Thank you, Peter Andre. I totally agree with the approach that has been illustrated by Peter Andre. I do think that, in fact, universities and the challenge for universities was at the final step a success for them because they were strong. But I also am convinced that the long-term effect of the pandemics is one of the most important things, and perhaps we should have a common position about it. A few comments. In fact, I think, like Peter Andre, that in many countries, we observed a delay in the majority of research projects. We had unpaid grants, and Peter Andre underlined the role of industry that was very quick in cutting budgets. And I think that it's true in our different countries. However, I think that in some countries, in France, for example, some of the budgets and the funding of doctors, postdoc, were prolonged, and this was very useful. And of course, for this generation of new researchers, the pandemics was a quite difficult step, but it was also an unexpected experience, and the way we have been facing the pandemics and perhaps thinking or rethinking other approach may be fruitful. I also do think that early career researchers, and particularly in women, were mostly affected, and this is a very important point we should take care about and to follow up. And another comment is about finally, the need for international research and of a sort of multidisciplinary kind. Of course, in the field of public health, because everyone was concerned about the pandemics and realizing that we had to face a new problem in the field of health with the virology and these worldwide pandemics, but not only. And I think that we also were realizing that we need a long-term science with a multidisciplinary approach. And I don't know whether you've seen the OECD recommendations that included several recommendations, and then therefore making some recommendations about the sustained funding for research and innovation conducted by universities and public research institutions and the firms in the aftermath of the COVID-19 crisis. Also to take action to ensure that research systems become more inclusive and support different research career paths. And this is in direct relation with Peter-André Hart was commenting. And also to, in fact, in some way leverage better real time and gathering our efficiency and data for our policy. And my final comment is that this pandemic was a sort of contrast, and on the one hand, the governments were very concerned about the crisis, the sovereignty, and on the other hand, I think that the science was experiencing some difficulties regarding the population opinion, and that we do need to have both, of course, budgets, and example of Germany are quite good examples, and I hope that in France they will be following the example of Germany for funding universities. And I know also the problems that have raised in Japan. So this need for long-term science, for careers for our younger researchers, perhaps our conferences that are conferences of universities from 3 strong countries in terms of science and innovation. Perhaps we should think about a common statement for that, because I think that we need it at this period of time. Thank you.
Well, merci, Monsieur le Président Tunondrara. So I would like to ask Dr. Katagiri Yasuhiro, President of Future University Hakodate. Would you please start your presentation for 5 minutes?
Good morning and good afternoon, and thank you for your talk. Ida-sensei, firstly, thank you for chairing this session, and thank you for Professor Peter-André Hart and Professor Manuel Tunon de Lara for our insightful talk. I agree the points both two raised, but I would like to approach from a somewhat different point of view. And I need to emphasize that even though this COVID-19 disrupted greatly our research activities, it also provided us new way to collaborate, expanded the sphere of collaboration greatly. So we have to pursue that avenue and keep looking at what are the good way to do research collaborations, both domestically and internationally. So just to recapitulate what happened in Japan, that's probably same with both Germany and French. France, we went into stringent mobility restrictions probably around March or April last year, which made it very, very difficult to do certain types of research, like laboratory work or field research. Those kind of things made very difficult. And also, the lockdown resulted in loss of research collaboration opportunities in meetings and visits, and international visits and meetings are impossible, completely impossible. But not only that, domestic meetings and visits become very difficult. But for that reason, rapid deployment and quick assimilation of video conferencing tools like Zoom take place, both in research and educational settings. And now we observe COVID infection is receding, at least for now. And we start thinking about resuming face-to-face meetings. And just looking back, initially, people struggle to cope, but eventually we get used to interacting over, say, Zoom, and many people actually even start to like it. And because it makes it very easy to organize meetings involving people, not only on site, but in remote locations. And also it makes it easy to invite people to give lectures or seminars over Zoom from remote locations. And so the program will be how to capitalize on the opportunities and quickly developing culture of video-based communication, or exploring adequate communication of conventional face-to-face style of communication to complement its deficiencies. And I want to emphasize first how to reconstruct collaborative environment, research collaborative environment under this mixed media setting. Obviously, different context requires different media mix. Mostly one-way dissemination of knowledge, webinars and seminars are quite adequate to use online media-based, video-based communication. And probably focused problem-solving discussions in established research groups. Those are also suitable for video communications, but serendipitous encounter of people and discovery of new ideas through brainstorming, those kind of meetings, that's very difficult over video-based tools such as Zoom. So the issue will be how to ensure participants' environment that support it. And also another point is, since we are opening up to face-to-face interactions, but we won't completely give up this video-based conference. So there will be some sort of mixed participants on site and over Zoom. So we need to secure a kind of environment that support equal levels of attention and engagement across different types of media use. That will be, I think that will be one of the important issues. And another issue is probably we need to think about the conception of time management. As many of you know, international collaboration takes place across different time zones. International conferences, when we participate in international conferences, some of you may need to wake up until very late at night or very early in the morning. And I know some of our colleagues have regular meeting with international colleagues in the dead of night. So we need to set up both new rules and new cultures to accommodate that kind of flexibility in working hours. I think those two are very kind of issues we need to think about from now on. Okay, thank you very much. I finally, I again thank Ida Sensei and two speakers, Professor Alt and Professor De Lara, and finish my presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Katagiri, for your very interactive presentation. So with these three presentations, we will move on to the discussion. So in this discussion part, we may discuss, for example, how the pandemic has changed research at the universities, what measures to be taken, what success has been achieved, and what possibilities there are for research in the future, or probably with which kind of fails we experienced. So now you are free to speak in any way you wish, including questions about the statement or inputs. Please press the hand raise button, then I call your name. Please unmute and speak for the speakers. Thank you very much. So we start the discussion. Is there anyone to raise your hand? Yes. First, Professor Leonel Lara de Bordeaux.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to make two quick points, which partly echo some of the things that were said. It's of course, I mean, there are sentiments basically I would like to express about the impact on research in the pandemic. I think the one thing it revealed that this pandemic, as far as research is concerned, is the need for universities to occupy the position which should be theirs in the scientific debate, especially in the media, in order not to let the media and self-declared experts shape public opinion into would-be scientific knowledge. I don't know if it's the case in other countries, but in France, the TV media for more than a year and a half now have been full of experts saying everything and the contrary, without necessarily bringing the scientific proofs, of course, that we are used to in the universities. And unfortunately, for the public, these are the main source of scientific, quote unquote, would be scientific knowledge. The second point is more focused on the humanities and social sciences, which I am from personally, because of course in the pandemic the need for biological, epidemiological research is obvious, of course. However, this pandemic has also revealed the need for social sciences and the humanities to try to understand defiant attitudes of the public regarding science, regarding the media, regarding politics. Again, I don't know what's happening. I'm not sure what's happening in Japan and Germany, but in France, there has been a kind of a mix of different forms of defiance against political decisions, against science. Everything gets mixed and give birth to some threatening attitudes, I would say, threatening for society and for the political state of nations. And so in this context, the humanities and the social sciences have an important role to play. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Larrey. The next will be Monsieur le Directeur Laurent Chambaud de l'École des hautes études en sciences publiques, I think. Monsieur le Directeur, please.
Merci beaucoup. Thanks a lot. just two short comments. The first one, I would like to support what the comment from Manuel Tunon de Lara about public health. As I'm a dean of the School of Public Health, it's obvious, but I think really that there is an opportunity to enhance some public health pluridisciplinary research. And it's also what Professor Lares said also, is to combine some epidemiology, biostatistics, clinical activities with some social sciences. And I think we need that. And this crisis, I think it's really an opportunity to develop, to enhance such mixed research. So this is the first comment. And the second one also is, I think that this crisis provides us a tremendous opportunity for research in the global area of One Health concept, because there is now really a political will in each country, and also it's supported by all the multilateral organizations to enhance research related with this concept of One Health. And I think it's something that the university have also to take into account. And just to finish my short comment, just a proposal why we could set up a research about the strategies that have been conducted in our 3 countries to fight this pandemic. And I think it's because our 3 countries have done different things during this period. And it would be very, very interesting to have a comparative analysis of what we have done in our 3 countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Director. Is there any other participant to speak? Well, maybe in order to spend some minutes in this session, I would like to raise some questions. I have, if any other people would like to raise your hands, no. So apparently no. I found 2 points to be probably discussed. I don't know if it is in this session or in other occasion. The one thing is that the COVID-19 is one of the pandemics in the world. We have already experienced Ebola disease, SARS or MERS, and so on. So we have, yes, we have now the lesson learned in the COVID-19, but if in a very near future a new pandemic will arrive, what will be the valuable lessons for any other kind of new pandemics? Well, that is a kind of future, well, a kind of a futurology, but this is one point I would like to raise. The other point I would like to raise is the probably the difference of science. I mean, many people speak about the scientific research in the sense of natural sciences or medical sciences, but it is very important. It was already pointed out, the importance of humanities and social sciences, the role in the pandemic situation. For example, the ethical issues is also very important in the pandemic, even in research, in particular in medical or public health research. So that Well, these 2 points I found maybe important for this group or for the for a future discussion in probably in another occasion. Thank you very much. Is there any other? Oh, yes, please. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, Professor Ida. Regarding your first point, you know, in France, regarding the lessons from the pandemics and other kind of possible pandemics, authorities and the government was quite influenced by the agencies in the US, and particularly what we call the BARDA, the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority. And I think that I also can share that with Peter André. I think that there is also a project in Europe about such ERA agency in charge of following the risk, but also raising the question of money, of budget and funding, because in the US, the BARDA has its proper budget with quite high funding. Do you have in Japan such initiatives, or already some agencies that are not only in charge of monitoring the health, well, the viral risk, but also other kinds of natural risk that should be tackled or controlled by appropriate science and research? So,
well, probably I'm not very qualified to respond to your question. Well, maybe Professor Nagata, the president of JACUIE, would respond to the question of Professor Tunondraga, or some other probably a medical doctor who are now presidents of different universities. In Japan, I mean. Nagata sensei, 無理ですか?
Hello, this is Caroline Benton from the University of Tsukuba. Unfortunately,
Caroline.
hello,
How are you?
very nice to everyone. Unfortunately, President Nagata just had to leave for another official appointment.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So he's
Thank
not
you.
here to answer the medical question.
So I would like to ask any other president of Japanese universities who are medical doctors or who are scientists. I'm a lawyer by training, and I'm interested in bioethics now, but for the scientific funding aspect, I would like to.
But what I mean is that we can have different attitudes from the countries and from the politics approach. And Peter André was illustrating what occurs in Germany with reinforcing the budget. And I think that universities should pay a very special attention to the budget for the long-term science and research. And some countries are tempted or are inspired for creating a new agency that is going to concentrate sorts of funding agency for having the response to the different kind of crisis, and perhaps universities and national bodies of research are, have an approach that is more based on the long-term research that is, I think, but perhaps it's my opinion, more appropriate response and not to have a very quick reaction, not having this basis for universities and good science. That was globally my idea. But I understand that perhaps countries and countries, for example, in Europe and in Japan, in Asia or in the United States, also needs to have this sort of system to follow up what are really the risks for the countries and their populations. And so we should have a sort of good balance between both of these approaches.
Well, thank you very much. I give the floor to Professor Peter Andre Alt.
I just wanted to fully endorse Manuel's statement. I think what we really need is a good balance between fundamental research and applied sciences. And it would be a fault to primarily focus on applied missions. Particularly in Europe, we witness a development towards permanently strengthening the field of applied sciences, following certain trends and mega trends, which are more or less derived from most recent developments, but forgetting that fundamental research is enabling us to react flexibly and with respect to crises and challenges we cannot predict, actually. So the best reaction is to properly fund the broad field of fundamental research and not to strictly focus on certain missions. The mission-related research agenda is important, and there is no doubt that it's needed, but we have to be flexible and to distribute our funding activities in both fields. And I just wanted to give assistance to what Professor Chambaud said. There's a need for public health, definitely, and I think this is also a global task we must pursue. And secondly, Professor Larrey mentioned the need for science communication. We all, I think, face a tendency for defiance against science, resistance. There are populist movements increasing, at least in Europe, and we need a complex competence for science communication, which does not only mean to explain what we're doing, what is difficult enough, but it also includes the ability to play on the different stages of social media communication. And this requires that we have to qualify, particularly our young researchers, but also the seniors, to take use of these instruments. Not everybody is a science communicator, and you can't qualify everybody. It's not useful and reasonable. But we have to prepare people to act on this stage, and not only to act as individuals, but to be aware of the fact that they are representing institutions when they're communicating as scientists and researchers. And I think this is also an experience we made in the crisis, that this need for explanation, for clarifying what science is doing, is a very important one. And this also includes that we have to explain people that science is not religion. So there is no undivided truth in science. Science is a process. Science is an attitude. Science is finding solutions, and it's an open development, and it's not about truth in a religious sense, and that is what we have to explain people. So if there are contradictions in science debates, that is not an indicator for the weakness of science, it's an indicator of the strength of science, and that is what we have to convey. That's the mission we have to pursue, I think, not only in crisis, but in general, I think. And the last aspect, I think, if we are talking about connecting our activities in research, and this is, as I've understood, also a topic of the next round, we must be aware of the fact that open science is a very important issue. I think if we are looking forward, if we are predicting the future, we will see it's more about collaboration than competition. It's more about sharing data, and it's more about publishing pre-papers in order to activate the scientific community to debate on certain findings and not to be the first. I think these races for choose, for discovery, for being the first on the globe, they have been overcome by the most recent developments, and we must strengthen the tools of open science in order to really join our forces globally. I think this is highly at time now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Alt. Is there any other questions? We are reaching at the last minute of our discussion.
Chairman, can I speak?
Yes.
I'm Hiroshima.
Who is? Sorry. Who
it's
is
okay
speaking now?
I'm speaking now.
Who is speaking?
I am Terashima.
Yes.
Okay.
President Terashima. Yes, please.
President Terashima.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, please.
All right.
Okay.
I went out for 20 minutes, so I came back. But my talk, this topic is very interesting. Please allow me to speak. Maybe nowadays modern telecommunication is advanced, and in our university we are engineering part, and not only lecture but also experiments, and the experiments are very important. But nowadays, telecommunication, telecontrol is advanced. It may be covered, but most important university mission is to provide the community place for the students. And also, university exists with district, community, society. The students need the discussion of teachers and the students, and also to live in a city. So maybe not only the IT technology, but also community is important. This is a mission of university. Getting knowledge is okay on online lectures, but to get wisdom needs very much meeting, and also the live with community. So university existence is very important. If we lose this mission, university is not necessary. But one or two universities in the world, it's okay. But for our university exists in the district in Japan. But to survive district university, to provide the community and talking with professors and students is important. Don't forget to.
Okay, thank you very much, President Terashima of Toyohashi University of Technology.
Thank you very much.
Well, we have already passed the 2 minutes of the threshold. Well, I think I should conclude. Well, it is very difficult to give a conclusion of this session. Instead, I would like to point out some points of discussion elements in this session. The first one is, I'm sorry, yes, I think President Alt pointed out the question of time frame. It is very important, long term or short term or even immediate term. That is, this time frame question is very important for discuss on the perspective after or even in the pandemic situation. in the field of scientific research or humanities and social science research. The second point is that the cost of different level is very important. In this cost, we include the financial necessity of the digitalization. And also, we also need to think about the scientific research funding. And from this cost point, I think we should think about the political assistance or political leadership in order to let the science go on in research as well as in the development of science. And the third point is that the social questions are also pointed out, such as gender equality or opportunities of future generations, or even the attitude of public opinions. And the fourth point is that the concept of health is also very important in the pandemic era. The concept of health is not only medical sense, but also social means of health is also important, which is very strictly pointed out by President Tunon de Lara and President Alt. And so that in one word, we face to the question, which is, what is the science and scientific development? I'm sorry, it is a kind of a perspective conclusion, but this is my personal point of view after this discussion in the dialogue too. And thank you very much for the three speakers, and thank you very much for all the participants in this session. I give the floor to the Madame, I'm sorry.
No problem. Thank
Madam
you so much, President
Thank
Ida.
you very much.
Thank you very much for chairing dialogue too. And we have planned for another break right now. Please allow me to cut this a little bit short to 5 minutes, and we resume at 10:51 in Europe and 5:51 in Japan. So 5 minutes, please. Be back in time and enjoy your short break. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Please let me announce the end of our short break. Sorry again for cutting it 5 minutes short. We now turn to dialogue 3, new options for international collaboration, opportunities and limits of virtual collaboration, which will be chaired by President Garnier of the University of Toulouse, Jean Jaurès. President Garnier, please. President Garnier, hello again. I already gave you the word. President Garnier, can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Okay, wonderful. May I kindly ask you to chair dialogue 3? Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I could not hear you before. Okay, thank you. Thanks to you. It is my great pleasure to start this third dialogue. As we were saying before, the pandemic has changed a lot our practices with regard to teaching, with regard to mobility, and with regard to research. And we could be facing a major change in our models and our practices. And this workshop, this third dialogue, aims to explore what these model changes could be in the future, and in particular between our 3 countries, of course. In other words, what can we do together that would be better and stronger than before the pandemic? By making sure that the pandemic brings us opportunities to develop our cooperation. About classes, for example, will hybrid pedagogy models become the norm? How will face-to-face and distant learning be combined? Could connected international campuses develop in an obvious way in the future? As you know, France has developed campuses of this kind. So have you also in Japan and Germany developed this kind of structure, and could we combine our models? Second point, regarding the mobility of students, of teachers and of administrative staff. As you know, the new Erasmus program called Blended International Programs allow us to imagine very different formats from the period before the pandemic. Short stays which could be combined with distant learning. Europe has a very strong political project to ensure that mobility will change strongly. And the combination of short stays and digital tools seem to be a very productive perspective. So what do you think? What do we think about that? And finally, third point, in relation with research, as we were talking about recently, new modalities are also observed at present, and new research topics too. For example, the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, the One Earth that we were talking about before. We could speak about, for example, the networks of French schools, which is an example, of course, in the world. For example, the French School of the Far East, there is a center in Kyoto. Could this next word have a different role now on, for example, for research mobility? This could be a question. Just like the digital platforms, which were until now focused quite only on education, and invent new kinds of collaboration in the field of research right now. So to share these questions and some others, I guess, We will listen to our three speakers. I will first give the floor to Mrs. Vice President of International Relations of Meiji University, Mrs. Teresa Komoro. Mrs. Komoro, we are listening to you.
Oh, thank you very much for introduction.
Sister, I'm sorry.
It's all right. So actually, my name Teruhisa sounds probably female in European context. Anyway, it's all right. So thank you very much for introduction. So today, I'd like to share our experience on international educational collaboration during the pandemic. And then I will try to give three ideas on future possibilities and the limits of virtual collaboration. So first, before the pandemic, we conduct most of the courses in our university in person in the classroom, of course. And an exception was a limited number of distance learning courses. However, they were less than 1% among the total number of courses. International educational collaboration on online learning with international partner universities through a joint class were being tried and partially practiced. However, it did not spread widely at that time. Regarding international student exchange, in 2019, our university sent about 2,300 students abroad, and also we took 2,300 international students here at campus. In our university, and probably like other Japanese universities, most degree-seeking students came from China and Korea, while we could host many exchange students from France and Germany. Anyway, our international educational collaboration and student exchange were planned and operated as on-site events as a matter of course before the pandemic. And in Japan, the pandemic happened around March 2020. During the pandemic, Meiji University provided the courses online, partly on demand and partly as live streaming. In 2021, this year, as the situation gets better than before, we now offer some in-person courses and hybrid classes. Here, the hybrid means live streaming of in-person courses from the classroom. Regarding the international students, unfortunately, we could not take international exchange students since spring 2020, as the international students' entry to Japan has been strictly limited. Some international degree-seeking students also take online courses from their countries as they cannot return to Japan. Upon this situation, thank you for my comment. However, somehow I could not share my screen, so now I do not screen now. It's all right. So anyway, upon this situation, our university offers online study abroad programs. Some of our students took online courses of our international partner universities instead of on-site study abroad. Also, some students from our international partners took our online courses instead of coming to Japan. We call this kind of arrangement as online abroad program. So I would like to introduce a survey of ours about the pros and cons of online class and online study abroad program from our students' view. Oh, now it seems that I could share my screen, so it's a nice timing to share the screen. So I'd like to show this table. From our survey, many students in our universities are satisfied with on-demand course as they can repeat and sometimes skip the recorded contents. And therefore, the contents were more comprehensive for them compared with the in-person class. And students can save time for coming to school, as in Japan, they often spend more than 1 hour to come to the campus. When students join online study abroad program, these advantages will also apply. And in addition, the participants will say the virtual exchange was less expensive than on-site study abroad. And they can manage study abroad and other activities at the same time. And some students also say that virtual exchange is safer than traveling abroad. But on the other hand, I should say that online class and virtual study abroad had some disadvantages. When we shifted to online classes, the faculty tended to give more assignments. For student sides, they needed more concentration before the PC screen without their classmates, as some of you may feel so now. The biggest problem on online class seems that the students have less or no opportunity for socializing and communicating with classmates. When students join online study abroad program, it is difficult for students to immerse life and culture of that country. According to our students' comments, the online study abroad program was beneficial as it gave new knowledge and a comparative view, while it was challenging to communicate with the classmates, and the study abroad time ends when the student shut down the PC. So far, we have noticed these pros and cons of virtual student exchange program. And from our experience, I would suggest 3 ideas on future possibilities and limits of virtual collaboration. First, we can deliver on-site study abroad programs combined with online modules as a preparation or follow-up. Even though online study abroad program could be an option for students during the pandemic, it does not seem that online study abroad could substitute for on-site study abroad totally. So now our university is developing a combination of online modules and on-site modules on the study abroad programs. However, secondly, we could seek further possibilities to utilize online learning in graduate and undergraduate and graduate studies. For examples, we are trying to set up a course that partially includes a joint class with international partner universities. This kind of partial collaboration could give more students opportunity for cross-cultural understanding. And there could be a good preparation for studying abroad in the future. Some of our graduate schools are discussing the online study and graduate transfer with international partner universities for graduate studies. Thirdly and lastly, through the virtual exchange, we can include lesser developed countries and regions, or where on-site study abroad seems difficult to provide as a collaboration partner. For example, our university began a short-time Japanese law program online together with the University of São Paulo, Brazil. Brazil locates on the opposite side of Earth from Japan, and it takes more than 20
Do we have a problem?
Here's a bad connection right now. Let's wait a few seconds.
Exchange could do something new that we did not imagine before the pandemic. So thank you very much, and danke schön, and merci beaucoup.
Thanks to you. Thanks a lot to you, Mr. Komoro, for your statement and for sharing with us these reflection and comments that you've just done. We now turn to Germany, and we will listen to Mr. Bernd Scholz-Reider, who is HRK Vice President International and Rector of the University of Bremen. So you have the floor, dear colleague.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. In the German's Rectors Conference's point of view, international cooperation is indispensable to universities. It provides vital stimulus for innovation in teaching, learning, and research. And for students and researchers alike, it constitutes professional and personal enrichment. Having said this, international cooperation has certainly become more complex in recent years. On the one hand, development in countries such as Turkey, Hungary, Russia, or China, to name but a few examples, are shaking the very foundations of our international partnerships. And on the other hand, the pandemic has greatly impacted on international collaboration and the mobility of students and researchers alike. So, what will international collaboration look like in the future? Allow me to address three key issues. Firstly, the international collaboration needs to become more resilient. With a view to the challenges we face, we need to focus on the standards and values we base our international collaboration on. In April 2020, the HRK Executive Board has adopted standards and guidelines for international university cooperation. These are country-agnostic fundamental principles and values around the various dimensions of international cooperation, such as strategy and governance, joint teaching and learning, joint research, and university as transnational spaces. The guidelines and standards are designed to provide key players, both the universities as institutions and the individual members of universities, with support and orientation on the ground when setting up and maintaining resilient university partnership. Secondly, traditional and new forms of international collaboration need to be reconciled and integrated into a new form of hybrid collaboration. The pandemic and the sudden lockdown in almost all countries worldwide has triggered a rich variety of new, mostly virtual formats of international exchange. We need to reflect on these new ways of exchange, mobility, and international cooperation. Virtual collaboration opens up new pathways and gives all students access to international experience. It is thus more inclusive. At the same time, we all know that nothing really replaces the actual on-site experience abroad. I would like future generations of students to be able to have this experience too. What is more, for all the benefits of digitization, we must be careful not to overestimate it as a solution to all our problems. For example, the increasing use of digital instruments poses new problems of data protection. For example, when we communicate with students in countries where freedom of expression is not guaranteed anymore. In the future, blended or hybrid forms of collaborations will be dominant. This trend is reinforced by the need to address climate change and reduce excessive CO2 emissions, caused, for example, through short-term travels. Thirdly, international cooperation will become more differentiated. Here in Germany, we see a trend away from a multitude of rather loose international partnerships towards more closely interconnected university networks. In Europe, we are testing the model of truly European universities, which may even merge into one university in the distant future. Important as this is, we need to combine this strategic approach with openness to the world and our engagement in a truly global higher education community. As university managers, we must make good use of the current crisis. Nobody wishes for this to happen, but now that the situation is here, we must deal with it. As we do so, we can also see this as an opportunity to challenge traditional institutional structures and routines. Can we do things differently in the future? Can we do something better in the future? Here we should move from crisis management to change management, at least in the medium term. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you so much, Mr. Renshaw, writer, for the comments you have just shared with us. Now let's listen to a French president, Mr. Michel Donneken, who will share with us his vision of new international collaborations may be possible after the pandemic crisis. Michel, you have the floor.
Good morning to everybody. I'm the president of the University of Strasbourg, and I think.
Sorry, I should say that. I'm sorry, Michel.
No, I don't. No, I don't see that because you had forgotten it. But to say that Strasbourg is, of course, a French university, but we were German from 1870 to 1919. And it's important because it was during the German period that we had the closest relations with Japan. We were the first university in Germany that had relations with Japan. We have built the first chemists, the first physicians, the first doctors in Japan. So we are really here a place of this triangle between Japan, Germany, and France. So I am also the chairman of one of the European universities, European Alliance, called Epicure. And one of our issues was, as we succeeded, new forms of mobilities and new opportunities. And we were very proud to be distinguished, particularly because we had a great ambitious program with Thessaloniki and Vienna about a virtual campus. And this virtual campus is one of 4 important issues of our project. And we were very happy to have the kickoff in Brussels. And we returned at home. It was the beginning of the confinement. And our pride became something like a shame because we were naive, thinking that the world has no virus, no war, and no questions of climate. The irony of history has given a lesson in humility to the Epicure project that I am running. In fact, our European university has put forward the birth of a permanent international campus. And as I said, a few days after the first enthusiastic meeting, we had to live in confinement. Digital technology had then become a makeshift tool, and we realized that we were not all the same level. We had not the same level of technical preparation and even less didactic. We thought to create an innovative, desirable, attractive space, and also discovered the other side of the coin, less brilliant than we thought. Having said all this, which is not original, and you all said, which corresponds to the experience that we all have more or less made during the pandemic, I would like to make some critical and forward-looking remarks. We have discovered, and you have all said it this morning, the interest of digital tools in training and teaching, learning, even a little bit in research. Too much digital, for me, is killing digital because it is killing desire. The mental disorders that have appeared among many students and teachers due to the confinement, of course, but also and above all, due to the astonishment of the gaze and intelligence, have claimed many more victims among our young people than the virus. This striking experience should serve as a stimulus for us to think about distance education. Admittedly, this does not take an apocalyptic or emergency character to the digital technology has had to assume during the excessively long months of the health crisis. The temptation is great to consider that digital would be the panacea for permanent international courses. As for nationals, internationals need the concrete, human, physical relationship in education. The success of Erasmus in Europa shows that the desire to meet people is a determining level for learning and training. More than 1 million babies were born in the Erasmus space. It's by now very difficult to make this appear virtually and in a digital way. The same goes for the link between teacher and student. It can only be built on a mutual presence of one to the other. We can therefore imagine use of a digital education as a sequence in a longer learning process, a process that combines face-to-face and distance education. But the concrete conditions of mobility are also called into question by the elaboration of the sensitives with regard to the protection of the planet, which requires less carbonized journeys, in particular in flights. But digital is always a very great energy consumer and participates to the next apocalypse of our climate and planet. Will we have to say, in order to be politically and ecologically correct, in a few years to our students and our teachers that to save the planet, we will no longer meet physically except between neighbors? To live longer or just to survive, which is horrible for me, will we have to curl up on our close neighbors? In other words, will our belonging to the world and the humanity only be virtual beyond a few miles? This means that in a large research university, such as the one I have the honor to chair, research must be developed for computers that consume less energy, but also means of transport, planes include, as carbon-free as possible. The intelligence of researchers must meet the same challenge as the imagination of our teachers and didacticians. As Woody Allen said, the only thing that interests me is the future, because I look forward to spending the next few years there. And it's our warm and a very particular and noble task for us, presidents of universities, to prepare this future with our researchers for the sake of our students. And for instance, in Strasbourg, we are building a great French-German quantum science center, which will effectively have the project to find the best ways of a less energy costing digital education. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Michel Deneken, the president of the University of Strasbourg. Thank you for your testimony about Epicure first, your alliance, European alliance, and thank you maybe for bringing in the debate ethical questions and philosophical perspective. I think it's a really good idea. We have to look for more sense about our activities for sure. And thank you for getting back to the basis of our actions and to the fundamental questions. For example, speaking about our collaborations, the first question must be, I would say, which values do we share? How can we connect in a stronger way our activities to reinforce the international academic challenges, of course, but to make stronger our humanities first, maybe. So I think it's all the topics we've been speaking about are really interesting. So I propose first to thank the three speakers, and I suggest that we do a round of questions from the participants of our webinar. So you have the floor. So I can see first Christina Stange-Fayos, who is the Vice President of the University of Toulouse Jean Jaurès, and I have the great pleasure to be the president of this great university. Christina, you have the floor.
Oui, merci, Emmanuel. Can you hear me?
Do you have to speak English, Christina?
Yes, I will speak English. Bonjour, guten Tag, konnichiwa. I would like to follow up on Michel Deneken's speech with a remark because the discussion on possible changes in international collaboration, which includes mobility, seems all the more interesting in this context, with one partner geographically close and another far away. All international actors in academia are convinced on the limits of virtual collaboration, I think, which can supplement but not replace more traditional methods. I would also like to mention here that as soon as the borders reopened, the first delegation to visit us was a Japanese delegation, which testifies to the strong links that were established before the pandemic. And also that the first General Assembly of the Deutsch-Französische Hochschule in 2 years will be held in Toulouse at the invitation of Mrs. President Emmanuel Garnier, same symbol. So let's not go all virtual and digital because too much distance or distancing is not a satisfactory solution, neither for us nor for our students.
Thank you, Christina Stange-Fayos. We may listen now, Francesca Biagini. I'm sorry, I can't read your university. Maybe you can precise this point.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Francesca Biagini. I'm Vice President for International Affairs at LMU Munich, so the University of Munich. Thank you very much for this meeting. We learned a lot. I would like to point out two things in this meeting. One is the perspective of the students. And I think that students are very interested in pursuing physical mobility. At least at our university, they have missed this very much. And we were very keen on let our students continue to have this possibility. So we didn't stop any program, and we have tried to offer them this possibility as far as we could. Personally, I also see a great difficulties in this virtual mobility or online learning. There are 2 points. First of all, we have really to understand if this is greener than moving physically, because I am a mathematician in the first place. So I know that you have to do a computation in order to compute how much energy you need to spend to have all these computers on. But of course, like there are some example like this meeting that will cost less in terms of energy if you have to move people from Japan, but not all meetings, not all mobility will cost less. So first do the computation. And second, something that emerged also in the first part of this great meeting is that if you don't meet, you do not have the possibility of exchanging ideas, and most important, to debate. And debating is something that this society really needs. It's not just that you say your opinion, that's it, but you have to listen to the other opinions, to integrate your opinion in your discourse, and maybe to reach another opinion. And this is, of course, something that we do in mathematics. We do not discuss opinion, we prove something. Yeah? And I think the university has a great responsibility in bringing our students to get these values of debating, of exchanging, of being able to listen to the other people, but to not, and also to hold your ground if you are convinced and you have the facts on your part. So I think I see a great, I appreciate everything in terms of opportunities that virtual mobility, online learning offers us, but I see a great danger in this, and I wanted to say this also here. So thank you very much.
Thanks to you for this interesting comments, of course. Other persons? Yes, I can see Mr.
Yeah, my name is Fukui. I'm the Vice President at Tokushima University, Japan. I have a very simple question. It's the Germany and the France is a good close neighbors, as already mentioned. And I understand that I respect the success in Erasmus program in EU. Highly respect that program. And so the strategy of the Erasmus program now changed for this coronavirus pandemic, because I'm now in the struggle to invite international scientists, including postdoctoral fellows from abroad. But we do still have a 2 weeks quarantine for those people. I wonder, even in EU, do you have that quarantine for 2 weeks between the river of Rhine, between France and Germany? I wonder, could you give me any idea about that? Yes.
Sure. I think that Michel Deneken is going to answer you, because he was saying no.
I came back this morning from Thessaloniki. I crossed, had 2 planes and crossed 3 countries, France, Austria, and Germany. And in each country, the documents are different. But in all the European countries from the European Union, it is possible by now to have tests or emergency vaccines. So we have no more quarantine. That means that if you have a cluster in a classroom or in an amphitheater, we confine the concerned students, but not all the classroom. It's a great progress.
Oh, thank you very much. That's help us to consider for the future, for the young generation and next generation science.
If you want, you can go to the on the website of the European Union, EU, and you will find for every 27 countries of the European Union the different documents necessary. Can you fill before the students come to Japan or go to Europe? It's
thank you very much.
Rather easy.
Yes, thank you. You don't have a border for that point of view in EU, I think. Thank you.
Thanks to you for your question. I give the floor to Mrs. Benton, Caroline. No, we can't hear you. You have no microphone.
Okay, well, here, are you okay? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's okay now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for the very interesting discussions on teaching, learning, and research and international collaboration in a new normal situation that we are facing right now. What we have to do next, I think, is that the actual vice presidents and the officers and the officials working on these problems have to operationalize all these ideas, these good ideas that we have talked about. And this is one thing that we are trying to do in Japan. Japan, in collaboration, Japanese universities, and in collaboration with the Japan Society for Promotion of Science, JSPS, has organized a group of 11 Japanese universities with offices in Europe, and it's called JANET, Japan Academic Network in Europe. And every year we meet together with European universities and their officers, the actual officers in charge of internationalization, and we have a forum, and we're now having an upcoming forum on October 28th and 29th online, and we will have 11 Japanese universities participating, and also many European universities participating, along with officers from Horizon and Erasmus, and also representatives from the Japanese MEXT. And so this will be it's a free online forum on the same topic of how to do research and education and to cooperate in the situation that we are facing right now. We are still registering for this is still open, and we will invite everyone to join, to ask your officers who are in charge of these areas to join, and so that you can meet, we can discuss together in breakout rooms as well. And you will also have a chance to upload your videos for a month to describe your activities and your goals in this new normal situation. And I think my colleague has uploaded the URL for the Janet form. So if you have any interest, and if you could please give this to your officers in charge of international relations, this would be a wonderful way to build on what you have reported here. And I will be sure to talk about what you have all said and bring this to and we will share this with the other members at the Janet Forum. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you. I can see that other persons want to take part of this discussions. Mr. Masako?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, I can't see. Mrs. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I am quite honored to have this opportunity to attend and to meet all the university professors, vice presidents, presidents, and of course, and especially I finally got to see some presidents with whose universities that we have a relationship with. My question or my comment is that we are trying really hard to help our students maintain their motivation to go study abroad, despite the fact that they have not been able to go abroad. And we have been doing all kinds of creative things, particularly through online courses. We have offered some courses online between our university and our partner universities abroad. And I am sure that many of your universities are doing this, but I think it's very important and very helpful if we can have some kind of venue in which we can exchange some information about what you are trying to do or what you are doing to maintain students' motivation level, so that after this pandemic, more and more students will be interested in going abroad. And I think that has been a challenge for us and maybe for some of your universities as well. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to ask questions. Thank you.
And thank you for your energy. So I think we're going to go this way. Anne-Françoise Zadar, I can't really read your whole name, I'm sorry. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Very happy to take part of this conference. Thank you to the CPU. I'm Anne-Françoise Zadar. I'm a vice president in charge of international relations in the university at the University of La Réunion. It's a university located in the Indian Ocean near Madagascar and Mauritius. It's a European ultra-peripheric region. And we have a recent MOU with Meiji University. It was signed before COVID crisis, so it was impossible to begin mobilities between our institution, but I hope it will be possible soon. It's very important for the University of La Réunion to develop scientific relations with Japan, scientific relations with Japan, because Japan is a member of the Indian Ocean Rim, and France was a member of this organization since 1 year, and EURA has different groupes de travail. J'ai plus le nom là du coup. Has different, je sais plus comment dire en anglais, groupe de travail.
Work team.
Workshop. Especially on the climate change, and especially on the ocean and blue economy. So we are very interested to develop this collaboration with Japan University, and especially to work on the different thematic in EURA organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Françoise Zadar. Really nice to meet you, because I think we do have things to speak together. And thank you for your comments about La Réunion, which is really a part of France, very specific. As you know, in a few minutes or an hour more or less, we have a session dedicated to these kinds of connections. So I think you will be there. I can give the floor to Mr. Professor Ida.
Well, thank you very much, Madame Garnier. Forgive me to speak too much in this meeting, but well, I feel I'm rather envy the nice location of University of Strasbourg, because you are in the crossroad of European countries, not only France and Germany, but also in the whole Europe, as well as probably in the world. I think that the problem in the pandemic or after the pandemic is how to combine the say pros and cons of the effects of the pandemics. Because I would like to give some well, beneficial points. The first is that we succeeded to use the so-called hybrid or high flex way of teaching and researches. Well, probably thanks to the pandemics. Digitalization can make people come together physically and virtually in one place. The second, in fact, in Shiga University, my university, have 2 campuses with 60 kilometers of distance, so that the digitalization makes us very happy to unite, in a sense, virtually together the people in the 2 different, two distanced campuses into one. That is a very nice effect of this pandemic. And thirdly, and finally, a student who are not able yet to go abroad because probably of the financial issues or family issues, they have now the possibility to virtually experience the foreign university and perhaps a foreign country's lives. So that I'm sorry to give such a contradiction to the well, President Denneken, but I felt such a personal feelings to your presentation, and thank you very much. I appreciate very much the nice presentation.
The debate is always interesting. The problem we have is that we have no time. So I see that some persons want to speak. Please, maybe quickly. Mr. Junshi Takada.
Thank you very much. I'm I'm Junshi Takada from Tokyo Tech. Yeah, I had a question a little bit off the main topic, but Professor Schultz-Reiter mentioned about some country risks. I mean, some of the countries. So I just wondered about the influence of such kind of international tension among the countries to the exchange of the students in Europe, in Germany or in France. Because in Japan, the government, in particular, we are the engineering university, and we have some influence about the policy of such security issues. So I just wonder whether in Europe such kind of things exist, or what kind of practices you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we have to stop this session. Maybe I can give the floor for 2 words to the 3 speakers we had in the session, if you want, of course. Mr. Komuro, 2 words, if you want to conclude, Mr. Schultz-Reiter and Mr. Denneken, and then we stop. Mr. Komuro, if you...
Thank you very much for the debate. Actually, I'm not sure whether the virtual student exchange would have the future. So at our university, we discuss this issues. So I'm happy to share our opinions on the trend of the possibility of virtual exchange. So that was very fruitful for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schultz-Reiter?
I would like to mention that our students already have made very good experience in preparation of a physical stay abroad with distance learning at the destination university a semester before they leave for their physical study abroad. And also, it might be a big advantage to stay in contact with the students of the destination university after the physical stay abroad, and also maybe with the teachers there. So that is really a big advantage. They can save time to be more familiar with the circumstances at the destination university, for example, if they are very well prepared. And to the question, there's for maybe the limitations for European students to go to the countries I mentioned in my short talk. There is no political limitation so far. It's just a matter of the autonomy of the collaborating universities.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this last element, of course. And we stop, we conclude really with the last intervention of Michel Denneken.
Yes, thank you for the very interesting discussion. My first quote will be, my conclusion is, digital is a wonderful tool, but it's one of the tools of my toolkit to have international students. The second idea is that desire is stronger as frontiers. And yes, I know that our students have problems for funding the students, their studies, to be in very wide countries. I know, but their desire is great, and we have to find the means. That means the funds, but also, as I said, in the next years, we have to make a great research in our universities to find better use of energy, so that we can continue to take to have a flight, to have a train, to have a car, to meet, because it is human meeting that creates university. Universitas is an old middle-age ideal of a scientific and humanist community that needs that we have to share our tables, our books, but also our passions. And so we have to find the mean that international mobility can continue and must be desirable. That's what our students want. They afford it. And the trigger for me is the wonderful desire they have to continue in this very dangerous world for them. But we are a university, that means teaching, learning, researching is a new opportunity to shape the globalization. We spoke very less from globalization, but the virus is very globalized. And we don't forget that more globalization is more peace and more, more peace. I finish with these words, but a little bit idealistic, like Humboldt, who was the founder of our university.
Thank you for this magnificent conclusion. Sorry we are late. Sorry for the next session, which is going to start maybe later too. And we go back to the staff, technical staff, and they will explain us how it's going to be. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We have now almost reached the end of our program, and it is my pleasure now to invite our next three speakers for a wrap-up and closing remarks. And firstly, I'd like to kindly ask Chairman Ushiki from the Japan Committe of Universities for International Exchange, JACUIE, for his remarks.
Thank you. So I'm Tatsuo Ushiki, President of Niigata University. I succeeded the President of Yamazaki Kanazawa University as Chairperson of Japan Committe of Universities for International Exchange, JACUIE, this summer. So on behalf of the university in Japan side, I'm very pleased to address the closing remarks of the 2020 first trilateral university presidents meeting, France, Germany, Japan, focused on future university development beyond pandemic times. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for taking time from your busy schedules to be here today. I would also like to express my sincere thanks to the chairs and the attendees who made statements and input for making today's meeting more meaningful. In today's meeting, we had a lively discussion on three fundamental aspects of the future of universities based on the statements presented. The activities of universities have entered a new phase occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. It will revolutionize the way of international student exchange and research exchange. Today's dialogue provided an excellent opportunity to capture and share these trends. Even after the COVID-19 pandemic period, campus digitalization must be accelerated more and more, while we fully realize the importance of in-person, face-to-face education and research activities. Today's meeting is a good chance for us to think about positive and negative point of online teaching and to seek new style of education and research in universities, including our international collaborations. For example, Niigata University has an agreement with University of Bordeaux for studying this enology and psychology. And in this summer, we had a very short period international student exchange program, online program. And in that time, Niigata University sent free Japanese wine to the University of Bordeaux, and the University of Bordeaux sent to us three very nice wine. And so through the online teachings, we teach the style of tasting for wine and also for Japanese sake. And this is a good combination between the digital and real studies. Anyways, so I am now convinced that exchange of view focusing on responding to the challenge each university is facing will be significant for future initiatives at each universities. We are able to hold today's online meeting after postponing the original plan to hold it in France and Germany. This fact has allowed us to reaffirm the usefulness of online conference. However, at the same time, we are now beginning to see positive signs of the possibility of international traveling and holding face-to-face meeting. We hope that next time, so we will be able to discuss and communicate with you in person somewhere in France, Germany, or Japan. Finally, I would like to thank the Secretariat of the CPU, HRK, JDGB, and JACUIE for all their enthusiastic work in organizing this event, especially for Maike, Constance, and Chime for their effort as technical host country coordinators. I would also like to express my sincere thanks to Jean-Luc and Chiara at CPU. I appreciate your attention and merci beaucoup, dankeschön, arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, President Ushiki. Our next speaker is President Tunon de Lara from the Conference of University Presidents CPU in France.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all the attendees from all of our conferences, the speakers, the chairs. I was very happy to participate with my colleagues from the Conférence des Présidents d'Université and learn from the experiences of from our different countries. I think that on the one hand, we have a sort of confluence of our opinion that we need to adapt our teaching, that we realize after these pandemics the importance of real relationship between students and between people from different universities and the true mobility versus the virtual organization, even if we are using this new methods and new facilities. And I think also that we should think about changing some paradigms and including the time scale that we used to have. And this is true for students and is probably true for our colleagues and mobilities we have between our universities. And I understand that we are having more and more experience on how to better prepare the exchanges, better prepare the teaching, and then, optimize the real exchange between people. Also, I would like to underline and this is very important, to the role we ascribe to science. And in a long-term approach, that means long-term funding and support. And despite this conference, we also can note the different approaches between our countries and how we did face the pandemics and its consequences. I think it's very useful to to share our complementary tools and experiences regarding European universities on the one way, regarding what Caroline Benton from the Japanese universities initiatives. And I think that, in fact, we should need a stronger international approach shared by our universities after the pandemics. We need to defend education and science. I think that universities are the cornerstone, in the words, for knowledge. And I will quote these very peaceful words of Michel Deneken. We belong to the word. We belong to the word. But I think that Japan, Germany, and France may be leaders in this approach for science and knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Tunon de Lara. And I now kindly invite President Alt from the German Rectors Conference HRK for his closing remarks. President Alt, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Last statement, brief statement. I think it had been a very fruitful exchange, thanks to specific examples and individual experiences you all contributed to the discussion. The crisis forces us to redefine our goals and to resharp our instruments to realize them. So we are, so to say, in a process of change management and will be in the midterm perspectives of the next future. This requires that we have to develop and carry out solutions which strengthen the robustness of our institutions, enable sovereignty, and also provide resilience. We have to live up with our academic values by deciding on the respective tools we want to use independently, which means if we take advantage of virtual instruments, which are playing the key role in the next years, we have to use them deliberately, both in science and in teaching, basing on hybrid solutions, but also in the field of academic exchange, where we will use mixed forms of both physical and virtual exchange. We all agreed in the observation that digital solutions in all these fields of action we are covering by our institutions are complementary. They are not replacing the core, the very core of our academic culture, which is and will be presence. I think we all have a sober attitude towards the instruments. The illusions are over. It was not a time in which we expect the solution of all academic problems by virtual tools, but we know they are useful if we take advantage of them in a very strategical way and basing on the insight in their complementary function. Let me close with a note on a topic which has not been covered that broad in our discussions, but is relevant, at least to me. It is the value of academic freedom. We are not only facing a crisis caused by the pandemic. We are not only facing robust solutions and a resilient academic system. We are also facing the fact that academic values are under threat in an increasing portion of countries worldwide. Here in Europe, we have to look at the eastern part of our continent, and we see that there will be and are measures trying to confine the radius and the impact of academic freedom, not by legal interference, but by technical measures or by influencing decision-making processes, by external goals, or by subjecting decision-making processes to the ratio of politics. This is seriously concerning us. And I think if we take a look at the challenges which are beforehand and we are expecting in the next months, we must be aware of the fact that if we want to solve the problems, we must do this in accordance with the principles of academic freedom and independence. And that's necessary for our institutions. Let me close with one final observation. I think science has played a key role in the last months. Science had solved the problems of pandemic, not completely, but it's on the way. Science had explained many problems of virology and beyond to the citizens of our countries. And this is a role which science must play also in the future. Communication will be in the very center of our tasks. That had been the case when I started my academic career. Public communication did not play that important role. This has completely changed. And I think if we want to take our responsibility as university leaders and members of an academic institution, we must take this very carefully and must qualify our young researchers with respect to better communicate about the things they are doing. I have to thank to both the staff and the host of this virtual meeting. It was a pleasure to work with you. Thank you for that perfectly preparing the meeting and perfectly handling it. So thank you all the colleagues. I'm very much looking forward to meeting you physically next time, and I'm very optimistic that we can make it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Alt. And well, this is the end of our Trilateral University Leaders meeting. Please let me thank all of you on behalf of JDZB, our distinguished speakers, chairs, and audience, and of course the organizers, our cooperation partners, JACUIE, CPU, and HRK, for making this fruitful exchange possible. It was our pleasure to have the opportunity to support this important event. We also thank our provider for digital conference setups, PCS in Berlin, Mr. Meyer, for his support. Thank you very much. Have a good evening in Japan, a good afternoon in France and Germany, a good time wherever you are right now, and goodbye from the virtual conference hall at the Japanese-German Center Berlin. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sayonara.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Herr Meyer, bitte einmal Bildschirm freigeben für mich.